stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners, students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Just a quick reminder that this meeting is audio and video recorded. I'm going to move on to item 3, the chairperson's remarks. We recently had a get-together for the school committee and central office staff at Deb Choate's house. I wanted to extend the committee's thanks to her for having organized that. The open houses, I know a number of you have been able to log in and put your names on the schedule. The one that's missing still is the middle school. I unfortunately have a building committee meeting that night, so I'm hoping that somebody who hasn't put their name on an open house yet can do that. It's the 27th of September. Yeah, it's a Thursday. So if you can just take a look. I know there's only a few people, and unfortunately we're going to be out too, technically. Although many. Okay. A note from Brian that the Raptor system is being set up, the Raptor Visitor Management System. Staff has all been loaded in. You can either use your badges or you can use the printed badge, but you do need to check in the office every time that you come in so that they have us on the available list of people who are in the building just in case there's an emergency. Is there anything else I'm missing on that?
Yeah, so I would just say if you all have a photo ID. So the way it works for all staff, if I'm going to another school building, I have a photo ID, so we don't need to print a label. But every employee and committee member's in the system, so you just check in. Whoever's at the desk is going to log you in. Doesn't need to print a badge. If you would like a sticker, bring in your license and we can make that for you too. But as long as you have your photo ID on, that's fine, and you'll just be logged into the system. And then again, just check out. That's changing the practice so we know people are checking in and checking out, so we always know who's in our buildings.
The photo IDs that we have expired. They were from last year. Do we get new ones coming up soon?
We will. I mean, we organize that with Keith to come out to a meeting, so we can do that. We can have him just issue. Everyone was here, and I know there's going to be some changes. The date it doesn't expire. It's not like a driver's license. You're not going to get a ticket. So just use that one until when we reestablish after October 1st and some seats change. We'll get some new pictures and just use the same pictures as last year, unless someone would request a new picture. We always have that opportunity as well.
Is that it? Thank you. In past meeting, I think it was May maybe, we had the honor of nominating for Life Achievement and Life Membership 2 members of the school committee with the Mass Association of School Committees. I'm pleased to announce that Deb Choate has been accepted for the Life Achievement Award with MASC, and Dina Sullivan has been accepted for the Life Membership Award with MASC. This does change for any of you who are going to the conference, the schedule around a little bit. It will add the award dinner on Friday night if you want to go to that for Dina. If you do want to do that, you need to just get in touch with Patty and iron out details on it, because I know a lot of people were intending to leave on Friday afternoon when things usually start to ramp down. Saturday is our workshop. If you bring your ideas for goals, please, since that's the main topic of them. If you have additional things that you want to bring through as part of that discussion, please feel free to do that. Think through it ahead of time so that hopefully we can get in at 8 o'clock and get a good jump start on it and get out of there before the estimated end time of noon. We're going to handle this a little bit later in the agenda as well, but we've also unfortunately received the resignation of Dan Valiente. Dan, we'll be talking about that in a minute, but it's unfortunate. We will miss him, absolutely. And Newbury Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator have already set in process selecting a new member. The meeting for that will be October 9th. I think the original blast that they put out had a date in September on it. Due to conflicts, it's actually been moved, so October 9th will be the new date. Anyone who's interested can submit a letter to the Newbury Board of Selectmen at 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Massachusetts, 01922. My last is just an update on a meeting that I broached, or a comment that I put at last meeting, that coming out of the alternative assessment discussion that was had within Ronnie, Joe, Larry, Freeman, and Brian, they brought up that they would like to have the 3 Board of Selectmen chairs sit down with Brian and I to kind of have a discussion to reset the base conversation. And that's happening tomorrow at 3:30, so I'll have an update for you at our next meeting. And I believe that wraps up Chairman's comments. I will open it for oral communications from the public. All right, it looks like we have no takers. So we move on to item 5, the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Student advisory report.
So we were hopeful. We are going to have Olivia Valley back as our rep, but unfortunately, with the coordination of the start of school, they weren't able to get together to develop that report. So actually don't even know if you've seen this yet, Narissa, but I proposed a meeting with them next Friday so that Narissa and I will get together with the leadership of the student council and set a plan moving forward so that as of October, there'll be a routine report, and as Narissa and I had discussed, and Dina before her, trying to get the students involved in the meetings, not just coming in. And again, it's hard when a student comes in and they're off from practice for a game and they still have 2 hours of homework to complete. But that is a work in progress, and by October we will have a report and a representative.
Excellent, thank you. New business. Paul?
I just wanted to alert the committee to a couple of issues that I've tried to raise at the subcommittee level, and hopefully they'll get started there and circle their way back to the full committee. One is just about the implementation of a cell phone policy for in the classrooms is one that I'd like to have the policy committee start working on. And the other one is just about a staffing spreadsheet, if you will, for the PNN to begin working on. And in the future, I'd like to have that come back to the full committee so that we could discuss it.
Both of those are on the agenda for Saturday.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah?
So is this where I'm bringing up the item?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Is that right?
Yes,
Do it
absolutely.
whenever. So I emailed all of you as a committee. Again, I apologize for the lateness of this. We applied for medical delegation. I believe it was originally in 2014. I have to go back and check. But this was originally with Joni Mino when she was the lead nurse. What this is it allows the nurse to delegate the administration of prescribed medication to a student if it's a routine administration. So student comes down every day to the nurse at noon to take a prescription. There's no decision that needs to be made. There's no called a nursing evaluation that would need, a medical evaluation that would need to be made. So it allows the nurse to delegate in his or her absence. So we had that discussion. I think that the committee was very much in support of that. Then we changed from Joni Mino to Mary Goldsmith for 1 year. So Joni retired in 17, Mary retired in 18, transferring that to, I can't call her Terry Arsenal, it's Nurse Terry, who's the lead or the nurse for Salisbury Elementary, but Nurse Terry is now the lead nurse. And as we went to transfer and notify with the state, because it changed the licenses, we're required to resubmit the application. So nothing has changed. This still is just a sign-off. I'll say it seems a little silly because I would be able to say, I would like to say that I trust our nurses' decisions, to be able to say I trust you with this, but I get it. It's covering bases. So it's a sign-off, Narissa as the chair, me as the superintendent. We have to have our district physician, which is actually through occupational health at Anna Jakes Hospital. The MD has to sign off on this, all the nurses. There's courses that had to be involved, already set with those. Our policy that I included, it's policy, put the glasses on, JLCD, and the policy I had included actually was updated and will be coming out when we get back to policy section J. I think we're reviewing that on the 25th. But the new policy, JLCD, is just a little more clear. This policy meets the guidelines of 105 CMR 210 in the regulation. So everything is in place. Our nurses are in place. This is a sign-off to say that for both, and this is, I should just say, this is during the school day. So this does not give, or a school function. So this does not give after-school delegation and after-school programs. And there's also a sign-off for a life-threatening allergy for EpiPens. We'll say this, the question then comes up, so what happens if someone wasn't delegated to, and we know a student has a life-threatening allergy, and we know the student has an EpiPen, that EpiPen's on the student, the EpiPen is in a closet, it's nearby. In the case of an emergency, there is the thing called the Good Samaritan Law, and if we are acting in our best intention, I would always tell someone, a nurse cannot tell a person to administer if that's not delegated, but anyone that is acting in their best interest would take that EpiPen and administer it, and they would be protected by this Good Samaritan Law. But this is for, it's not routine, but it's an opportunity to make sure that if the nurse is down somewhere in the building, as nurses often are, running, chasing after incidents, that there's an opportunity for someone else to administer those routine medications. So if you'd be willing to make a motion to allow Narissa and me to sign off on that, again, it's a reapproval, it's a reauthorization of the same approval that you have made in the past, and it's simply a matter of changing the title or changing under the license, the nursing manager under which it's applied.
And I just want to add the reason that we're taking this up under new business is because this came up yesterday, so it was in the 48-hour window. We're allowed to take up things that couldn't have been reasonably known at the time of posting. It does seem like something that's not going to be confrontational. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a lot of discussion about this, or that we would hear back from this for not having had the 48-hour notification, and they are, is it 2 months, I believe?
So thank you. That's the other piece is it can take, again, it happens, a lot of times it happens more quickly, but the DPH says it can take up to 6 to 8 weeks to process the application. So we'll certainly hope it happens quicker than that, but rather than waiting until October and then to November, December, we can work around this. We have plans in place, but we'll certainly be happy to have this back on file and moving forward again legally.
Absolutely. So can I have, well, no, I'm going to make a motion first. Can I have a motion to allow Brian and I to assign the guidelines for reviewing and approving, oh no wait, that's not good. The handling, storage, and delegation of medication and or the training of unlicensed personnel to administer epinephrine via an auto-injector.
I'll
Dan?
second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Any other new business? Okay. Moving on to item 8A. We are recognizing our outgoing school committee members. I had the unfortunate privilege of announcing last meeting that Monique was resigning, and this meeting that Dan was resigning. We would like to thank you very much for your service. I know how many hours and, you know, time away from your family, time spent reviewing documents, making sure that everything is in order, that you have a good understanding of it, time spent here in meetings. I mean, it is just a phenomenal personal investment that you have put in your time on the school committee, and we'd like to thank you for that. I know you never liked having the camera on you, Monique, so maybe you can just hide. So there's a little symbolism in these, in that they're peace lilies, so you may have peace in your lives after school committee. Moving on to 8B, the history and social science update, which I believe is being handled by Anna Bates and Kim Croto.
Yeah, so I'm going to hand this to Kim Croto. Is it just, I'm going to skip Kim. And we're going right to Anna Bates, who is going to give you an update on history. I keep calling it social studies. It's history and social science, but an update on what's to come from new frameworks from the state. So Anna, thank you for being here.
All right, so thank you very much. I'm excited to be able to share this overview of the new social studies frameworks with you.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Okay,
a little disclaimer. Anna's a history nut, okay? This is her background. So when she says she's excited, she is actually genuinely excited.
I am. So tonight I just want to provide you with a little bit of an overview of the frameworks which are adopted in June, and then also the work that will be required, some of it that's already started, and then some of the work that we have planned moving forward to make sure that we're prepared to implement these. So I started with the district vision, which I know you're all familiar with, but I did want to highlight that last part that says students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens, because that captures the spirit of these frameworks so well, with this sort of commitment to civics, which runs all throughout them. So I'm going to start with the overview. They were adopted in June of 2018. They're still working on final copies, but are moving forward with that. And I want to go over some highlights of the framework. So there are three different pillars in terms of three main ideas that really support history and social science instruction. One of them is the content standards. Another are history and social science practices, and they're very similar to the mathematical practices which are embedded in the frameworks and the science practices which are embedded in the STE frameworks now. And then the literacy in history and social studies is not a new idea, but it's been actually pulled from the ELA frameworks into the social studies frameworks as well. So those are the three different components of the frameworks. Where in the past it's been a very strong focus on just content, and now we're balancing it out with these other two pillars. There's a greater emphasis on civics throughout the whole framework. There are guiding principles at the start of these frameworks that address reasoning, historical thinking, literacy, social emotional learning, and sort of frame the whole document in that context. There are some great appendices that support that all students will explore history in depth, and what I mean by that is there are appendices that support the learning of EL students in history and social studies and students with disabilities as well. In terms of content changes, there is an addition of a civil rights unit in the 5th grade frameworks. Grades 6 and 7, they're currently, or in the past frameworks, the 2003 frameworks, it was geography in 6th grade, ancient civilizations in 7th, and these have been combined into a 2-year world geography and cultures, so that the geography is actually taught within the study of civilizations. 8th grade, there's a new civics course, and that's a significant change. And then at 9 through 12, there are going to be at least 4 courses at the high school. So this is the first time that in Massachusetts we've said students pre-K through 12 should have social studies every single year. Are there any questions at this point?
When it says a civil rights unit, does that mean what's the length of the unit?
So there's the content standards in 5th grade have stayed similar to what they have been, and they've added this additional section on to address the civil rights movement.
So it's not the whole year, it is just a unit to the, okay.
Yep.
Monique?
This is for this year?
So the frameworks were adopted in June.
Yes.
And I can sort of talk about what we've done already and sort of plans for implementation. I think we would start to implement this in the fall of 2019.
So the materials you need will be in next year's budget?
She's going to get to that.
She's going to get
Thank I just have one quick question, Anna. In a lot of schools, 6, 7, and 8 are actually in a middle school together. In that they have a shared topic over 6 and 7, do you anticipate any issues or any further work having to be done here to help bridge the 3 elementary schools housing the 6th grade coming into the middle school housing the 7th?
I think we would have to think, we definitely need to think about how we want to roll that out. I think the state is giving some options in that if you can address the frameworks in the same way that we have been with geography in 6th and ancient civilizations at 7th, that's still an option to stay with. My feeling is that more districts will be moving towards sort of full adoption of these as they're written and maybe looking at some curriculum shifts to do that.
Any other questions before Anna goes on?
Thank you. So I worked with the program coordinator at the high school, social studies program coordinator, and then the content leader at the middle school to develop a plan for grades 7 through 12 social studies teachers to collaboratively unpack and deepen their understanding of the framework. So there is a professional development time set aside in October and January for those teachers to work together. This summer, I attended a 3-day Civics Education Institute sponsored by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with representatives from both the middle school and the high school. And at that institute, we outlined a grade 8 civics course that is aligned with the framework and also established a networking group of local districts who are at various points of implementation. Some of them already have civics implemented in their schools. So we have some good contacts around who are willing to support whatever work needs to be done. And then after that, in the summer, I provided an update to superintendent and assistant superintendent about our progress. So moving forward, the plan would be to begin implementation at the secondary level in the fall of 2019 with the institution of a grade 8 civics course, realignment of the courses at the high school, and the incorporation of the literacy and practice standards in grades 7 through 12. To make that happen, the action steps would be the unpacking of the framework, which will happen on those PD days, develop a vision statement for secondary history and social science education at Triton. Take inventory of what we have for curriculum, instructional, and assessment needs, 7 through 12, and then begin to explore resources that are going to support some curriculum changes, making sure that they're aligned with the vision statement that's been developed. And then finally, identify some questions that need to be answered prior to implementation in the fall. A similar process will take place the following school year in grades K through 6 to ensure that time is dedicated for social studies instruction, that professional development is provided to support teachers' understanding of the framework, and that we have resources to support implementation at all levels. So if we were to follow this, it would allow for full implementation prior to the 2021 school year in which MCAS may be aligned to the 2018 standards. That's the earliest point that they're saying there may be an MCAS assessment in social studies. We don't have a good idea of what exactly that would look like, not sure what grade level, but there is some talk about doing an alternative type of assessment.
That was the commissioner who mentioned that, right?
Yes. Yes.
The commissioner is a fan of those alternative type of assessments.
So this, although the content doesn't change significantly at all grade levels, the implementation of these frameworks does represent a significant shift in instruction with incorporating those other 2 pillars. And implementation is going to require support in the form of curriculum materials and also related professional development. Any other questions at this point?
Dan?
Yeah.
It's more of a comment. I think it's laudable. We had a meeting a little earlier, and I had mentioned that I was in speaking to a 3rd grade class last year, and the subject was, what is a school committee and what does a school committee do? And prior to that, I had seen a news article about the slipping civics literacy. And this is obviously designed to address that. I guess as you lay it out, it's a process that's going to take a few years really to work through. I guess maybe a question I would have is what do we need to do in the meantime to make sure that we don't lose more students to this kind of slipping civics literacy. I mean, and I guess the answer probably to that is reinforce the current programs that we have in effect. And I would only urge us to make sure that we don't wait too long in terms of some of the earliest work that we need to do. That would be my only.
Yeah, I'll take that loaded one. So, so we've had discussions in the past couple of years about the fact that we and many schools, primarily because it was what was high stakes, have focused so heavily on math and literacy. It's a good thing, we need to, but at certain points it was at the expense of science and social science. What am I? Sorry, history and social science. I'm going to get it. So we addressed that with science. We now have a curriculum that was adopted. We are in, now we have that adopted going into our second year. This is the next horizon, but we can't just go and make changes until we've paced out and effectively planned the changes we need to make. The biggest impact is likely going to be that it's going to start, my understanding is an assessment at the high school level and work backwards, we would hope. Okay, that's just a hope I have. So because of those changes, 7 through 12 is where the biggest change is. And then really below that, the discussions we've had is how do we fit that into the content, into the day, into the 6.5 hours that we have. I think science lends itself I should say, requires a lot more hands-on lab work, whereas history and social science has a lot tighter blend with literacy and the way that we can use that, those workshops and those models to do good civics and history and social science instruction. So it's a work in progress, and I can say I'm committed, and I know, again, very excited. We will do it as quickly as we possibly can, absolutely.
Other questions? Dina?
Anna, you had said that there could be an alternative assessment. Do we have any idea what that might entail? Are they thinking portfolios or something that is done throughout the year rather than, part of the MCAS testing?
We don't have any idea.
None whatsoever. Okay.
It could be something like that. There hasn't been a lot of information put out about that, but it's just the idea has been kicked around that it's going to be different.
And I said it under my breath, but it was the commissioner who was making these suggestions. The commissioner is a fan of standards and accountability, and assessments are good, but it's not everything. And he believes in an alternative assessment, whether that then replaces all of MCAS, grades 3 through 10, or what? Who knows? At this point, it's bombs being dropped here and there. So there's been no concrete information. And again, I asked Anna to come tonight to give you just a snapshot of what's to come. The real answer is we don't have all the answers yet because we have a lot of work that we need to do to unpack all of this and figure out where we need to fill in the gaps. We know grade 8, a year on civics, that's a gap. That's brand new. Other things, it's figuring out how to fill it in.
Linda? Oh, Tina?
Linda. I have a question in terms of money. Is this curriculum something that can't be taken away based on budget and funding, or is this something that we'll have to understand what the cost of the items are going to be? So, because this sounds amazing and I don't want it ever taken away, because these were some of my favorite subjects when I was in school, and I like the idea of K through 12, this being implemented. Are there things that we should be preparing for in terms of supports? So
I'll take that one too.
We can make sure that we have all the books and the supplemental things that we need to be successful in this?
So I would say right now, this isn't going to, where's the paper? This is not going to be an option. We have to teach. We are going to be our students at a disadvantage if we're not giving them this paced content.
Okay.
That said, it may not be that we're replacing our history and social science. I don't think it will be. It's a fair statement to say we're not replacing our history and social studies curriculum between kindergarten and 12th grade. There will absolutely be, we keep saying grade 8 civics, there will be something that needs to be in place there. Is it digital curriculum? Is it a textbook? Curricula looks very different now than it did years ago. Pricing is different. So I wouldn't even know, would you even have a sense of what is that to ballpark figure? Okay. But the hope is that as we go through this year, we start to tease that out. So by the time we're doing budget and 3 weeks, that we'll start to have those numbers start to at least have a sense, so that we can have some change in place at the high school next year.
Yes. So some of these, and just from working with social studies teachers, there's a lot of open source material available as well. So it doesn't necessarily, particularly at the secondary level, need to be a set. This isn't like a STEM Scopes or an Inspire and a set curriculum, that there are lots of other ways that these standards could be addressed. At the high school level, because of moving World 1 out of 8th grade, that's sort of the current 8th grade, it's going to be moving up towards the end of their high school career, so it's not something where you could take the 8th grade World books as they are and then move them up to the seniors in high school or to the juniors in high school. So I don't have any sort of figures right now, but there, I would think, be some associated costs.
Linda?
At the high school and middle school, you have content teachers that teach science, math. At the elementary level, you're talking about K through 8 or 12. So we have a new science program, a new math program, and now a new history program. What supports are going to be given to the elementary levels for the teacher, which is the same teacher that's going to be teaching all of the content?
So I agree that at the elementary level, they likely will need a different level of support than somebody with a area of content expertise at the secondary level. I hope that they have as much support as they need. It would be great to have, besides the curriculum materials and PD, if there could be some sort of ambassador or coach or someone to help roll this out, but I'm also aware of sort of the budget and things like that. So I think that we're committed to making this work and providing the elementary teachers what they need to move forward.
Back to Dan's question, what I said about we're going to do this as quickly as we can. We're not even to fully adopting, I would say, math and focus in year 4. Or are we in year 5? 4? 4. So even there, we're a late initial implementation because we don't have a lot of support. So there's been a lot of areas that we're backfilling that PD, had we had a dedicated person to be in and making sure our teachers were expert in being able to use the tool. Now we're doing that with science. If we just layer this on, that's not going to be effective. So it's how do we do it well? We could be doing a whole lot better and a whole lot more for kids if we had more, I would say, personnel resources, not necessarily books and things, but the people who can focus and gain that expertise. That's an impact.
Do you have more, Linda?
No, that was the
Anyone
question.
else? Okay, I had 2 quick questions for you. I think one kind of goes to the point that Linda was making as well. The staff that we currently have, is this something that they're going to be readily able to take on as a curriculum with just training on the curriculum, or is there additional kind of gaps in there that need to be filled? Because I'm assuming that where these grades are, some of the teachers that are currently teaching those grades are not used to teaching these particular topics, and it's not just a matter of layering on a new curriculum. It may be an entire knowledge gap.
So at the secondary level, I don't think there are going to be issues at all. The high school program coordinator is fairly certain that together they can decide on something that works with each teacher's area of expertise and where they would go. And then I think at the middle school it would be fine as well. These are teachers who have a strong background in the social sciences and could teach either a World 1 class or teach a civics class. At the elementary level, I do think there needs to be some support in the form of professional development, like not even talking program, but just what do these standards mean? What are the literacy practices? What are these sort of practices of social sciences, and how can we incorporate them in? Because that can happen without a program. That can happen with the current whatever they're using currently, is let's get these 3 pillars solid, make sure everybody understands what the frameworks are about, and start working on those. And that can be done perhaps internally through PD.
And I think my second question goes to that as well. I know when you look at a lot of the current elementary schedules, they kind of have this science, social studies alternating, or I think it's I believe it's how the teacher wants to handle it. Kind of, they can do 3 days of science in a row and then a couple of days of social studies in that block. when I saw the initial, I haven't seen these recently, the frameworks, but when they first came out for comment, I looked through them, and it looked like a lot of ELA integration. How do you foresee that kind of working with the sort of existing structure today, where it's maybe set aside versus what's going to happen down the road?
I think that we need to change the way we think about scheduling a little bit, because there are not enough minutes in the day to teach science separate, and then literacy, and then math, and then social studies. But there's a big overlap between these. And one of the things about the ELA frameworks is they don't specify sort of textbooks and things that can be used, that those skill-based standards can be applied to any content area. And I think that this is a great opportunity for that. So we'll have to rethink how I think we teach, but it may not be 45 minutes of social studies and then 90 minutes of ELA. You have to kind of sort of reframe that a little bit.
Maureen?
At the high school level, they'll be required to take an additional year then of history, so 4 full years. Does that mean that there could be a need for increase in staffing to accommodate the extra year that the students will be?
So are they 3 now? I was just looking at that policy. Should know the graduation requirements off the back of my head. But if it was an additional year, then yes, it would require additional staffing, because it would be additional sections.
Okay. I believe it's currently 3, just
Yeah.
for my own high schooler.
So the impact of that could also be that if we can't afford the additional staffing for social studies, that those students are coming out of something. So again, it's eating into more electives rather than being able to fund both. Does that make sense? So those students, so our number of students isn't going up.
Right.
So if we have the same students and now they need to take another year of history, there's another classes that they're not going to have to take, or I should say be able to take, which means that those teaching positions free up. So that's the net impact if we're not able to address it correctly. So we remove breadth of programming in other areas in the non-core, which we keep saying we need to not do. So.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate the time that you put into this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna.
We're on to 8C, the fiscal year 18 year-end report and discussion, and I believe that is Amy Posick who is coming up to join us.
So I'm going to pass this to Michelle and Amy. So just as a reminder, we're kicking Kim out one more time. So again, Amy Posick, District Treasurer, she reports directly to you. She is as the committee in a regional school. It is one of the uniquisms of being a region, where a town has a treasurer. As a region, you have a treasurer. So Amy, as your treasurer, is responsible for making sure that the cash in the bank matches what we are doing in the ledgers and reporting to you. So this was something we started last year, having her come to report and speak to you directly. It could happen more than once a year, but I think it's a good opportunity for you to hear directly from her as far as how things are going. And I don't know if this is going to be a tag team, who I'm handing this to.
Yeah, no, definitely a tag team. So I want to thank Amy. We have a great financial team, and as Anna gets really excited about social studies, we get really excited about finance, which is very unusual. But Amy and I, we work extremely well together, and she, as Brian said, she keeps us, in check. She's our check and balance. So we are just about done wrapping up fiscal 18. We had a great year. It was a fiscal challenging year. As you all know, we had frozen the budget early on. I want to say it was in December that we put a hard freeze on the budget. We still ended up closing our books solvently. We did dip into the E&D. As you all know, you authorized $299,000 of the last of our E&D back in May. We did use a portion of that. We closed our general fund with an excess of $284,000. So we used just a teeny bit of that E&D, but it did bring our E&D balance down to 0. So we are looking to replenish that hopefully with the closing of the fiscal 18 books. Just two things I wanted to mention. Our state revenues did come in a little bit over budget for last year. Our Chapter 70 figure came in just about 24,000 over budget, which is great. That goes to E&T, and our state transportation reimbursement came in 52,000 above our targeted number. So those two numbers are favorable for us. And as I mentioned, on the expenditure side, we're looking at, surplus of 284,000 after we tapped all that E&D. So Amy has a little bit more about the Treasury, and we are just finalizing some of our revolving accounts right now and our grants. And on your at your places tonight, there was a revised revolving report. We did discuss it in the Finance Subcommittee, but these summer payroll salaries, which really are committed as of the end of June. The teachers had earned them as of the end of June, but they weren't charged to the revolving accounts till July and August. So I went back and charged all those to those revolving accounts because truly the expenditures are committed as of June 30th. So that's what that report reflects, and those are the balances that will roll forward till July 1st, and that'll be our beginning balances for the new fiscal year. And now I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. Again, just want to say hello and thank you for having me. I look forward to coming before you every year. You have, as Michelle mentioned, a detailed, financial report in your packet, so I'm not going to go through that in detail, but happy to take any questions on that, of course. I just wanted to give you a few highlights from sort of what I see throughout the year, and then, again, just happy to take any questions that you might have. Overall, the cash flow for the year was very consistent, which is nice. That's a stable state that we like to see. That's mostly due to the state providing reimbursement monthly, which was a change a couple years ago, but that really helps to level off our cash flow. Additionally, just want to thank our member communities for getting our assessments to us timely. That's very impactful, and we appreciate that. Pleased to report that one of our communities has agreed to remit their monthly assessment electronically to us, which is great, and we're hoping that the other two communities come alongside and get on board with that. Just makes things flow a little bit easier.
In their defense, we have not asked them all yet. We just came in discussion with one of our communities, so we're hoping to extend that to the other two communities.
Yeah, it just makes it nice. So that was really good. And then one of the things that one of my jobs as treasurer is just to really be current with market conditions and know what the local banks are offering in terms of different products. And so Institution for Savings, where we do a lot of our banking, opened up a new money market back in, I think it was April, that is currently yielding 2.25%. So as many of you are seeing in your own checking accounts, the rate environment is good. We're starting to earn a little bit more on our deposits. So the district, Michelle and I decided to open up an account and take advantage of that. So just to kind of quantify that, last month the district was able to earn about a little over $3,400 for the month, which we haven't seen interest like that in quite a few years. So I'm hopeful that that will continue, and all the signs look like there will probably be at least one, if not two more, hopefully rate increases throughout this fiscal year, which again would just be great, and it just brings more funds.
So if I can say, when I stepped into central office in 2005, we were assuming and receiving about $150,000 a year in interest. So we're excited about $3,400 a month, so that's what, $40,000, $45,000. It's still a third of where we were, how many years ago that is. I'm not going to do the math. 13 years.
I still think it's good. No, I'm just kidding.
It's good. It's better. It's better. It's better than zero.
No, yeah, it's better than zero. So yeah, and again, we're keeping an eye on the market. I'm always watching to see what the local banks are having, for their products, and so that was a great one to take advantage of. Continuing in that thought of earning on our funds, Michelle and I have begun to look at different options for our OPEB funds to get those invested. It's a small amount right now. The district has just set aside $10,000, but that money should be making money for us. So we've started that process. As we sort of move along that process, you will be hearing from me again. There will be some investment policies we might be talking about and different things. I know you can't wait, but I will be back when the time comes for that. And then I really wanted to take a minute and commend Michelle and the business office for a very smooth close process. There's a lot that goes into it, particularly in the summer months when most of the staff is on summer break. It's a very busy time for the business office. To compound that, Michelle took on the big task of bringing payroll in-house, which is a huge win for the district because of the cost savings and also eventually the increased level of customer service, if you will, for our staff. But that doesn't come without a lot of work and training and preparation that occurred in the business office.
But that was the whole team.
Summer.
That wasn't just me, but yes, the whole team.
The whole business office team,
Yes.
and really, that was a big undertaking, and it went really well, so congratulations on that. So that's sort of the overview, things that I'm keeping an eye on, and just happy to take any questions you might have.
Questions, Monique?
Are you in a position to comment on the choice numbers this year, like in and out, in income, outcome? No, you don't know yet?
I am.
Oh, you are?
If you don't want me to comment, okay. It's your last chance.
To hear from you.
Are you talking about what the numbers are now?
How much are we generating and how much are we paying?
So we will know that for sure. October 1 is the count, so we don't know. We honestly don't know right now. We know what the numbers, last year we were 2-to-1 ratio, so roughly 140 some odd out and 70 some odd in. No, other way.
I was good.
Thank you. So at one point we were twice as many out than in, now we're twice as many in than out. Again, all those numbers are depressed because the enrollments in the region are down. But it's still absolutely net positive, yes. But the October 1 count happens on October 1. That finalizes, and we generally have those numbers back from DESE. It's usually between Christmas and the New Year, sometime in that week, when they get published. And we get our first payment in and out. Is that a quarterly? Is that a monthly? What do they estimate? That's quarterly. Okay. So that first, we get caught up then.
Yes. Watch
You
us.
have to come and comment.
Yes.
Oh, she'll be back. You don't really believe she's done, do you?
Any other questions? I just wanted to make a comment because this came up at the very beginning, and I think it just bears saying over and over again, if we're only going to spend $14,000 of it, why did we vote the entire amount of E&D over into the budget? And the reason that we do that is because a lot of the payments come in literally, like June 28th? We're getting big payments. So that money is used to cover our bills while we're waiting for those payments to come in. So in the long run, we only used about $15,000 of it, but we probably made temporary use of more of that amount toward the end of the fiscal year.
Yes, there was a receipt, we call it E-rate reimbursement. We received, I believe, June 29th of about $120,000. So literally, had we not had that receipt June 29th, we would have been digging into the E&D a little bit more, or that excess a little bit more.
Paul?
Did come up with a question. So, Annie, on this OPEB,
Yes.
how are other districts dealing with that in terms of investing it?
Yeah.
And what should we be doing going forward?
Sure, absolutely. We were just looking at this. So there's a couple of different wealth advisors out there that specialize in this area of investing OPEB funds. And so the district currently has a trust in place, and right now the funds are just segregated. But the next step is really to bring on a financial advisor who specializes in OPEB funds, come up, and then they will recommend how they would be invested. And then they also take into consideration our actuarial report, which contains all the information about what our total liability is and also the interest rate that we need to get there to fund it, and then what the district's funding plan is for that liability. Most districts are would you say, have not yet begun to fund it. Some have. It kind of runs the gamut. We've made that first step with setting aside $10,000, which is really just a drop in the bucket. But we just want to continue that process and be proactive so that hopefully as we get more funds in, we can earn some returns on them.
So this is, I think, more of a Brian question. Brian, is it lawful to take public funds that go into OPEB and then shift them into the market? Do you know?
Say that one more
Because when
time.
you're talking about wealth advisors, to me, what that means is the market.
I should have said, yes, it is. I'm sorry.
It is lawful?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's specific standards, and there's a lot of restrictions on what these advisors can put the funds in. They're very conservative.
Very conservative.
Sort of discuss a risk model, and a lot of that is detailed in investment policy that would come before you before any of this took place. But yeah, they are funds invested in the market, so they're not like our general fund funds, which are fully insured. This is invested in the market, but again, it's very conservative and
it's standard. I mean, oh, sorry. I mean, we haven't had a wealth advisor because we don't have the wealth yet. So, so we put that 10,000 there. I'm sorry, I was not trying. This is not funny, but it kind of is. So we put that money there, and we have a policy. The previous Amy Jefferson was the treasurer at that point, and so that money is there. We've never figured out a way to fund any more than that. There are towns close to us that have fully funded theirs. There are towns who, like Triton, have really not done much at all. Regions, it tends to be a little more of a hard topic because the towns tend to work on it, and it's hard to, similar to E&D, to build a balance when the towns haven't done it themselves. But, you know, so we need to do something in regards to that funding plan to say, even if it's 10,000, whatever it is, 50,000, to be putting something consistently, and it will come to affect us on our financials on an annual statement. That the full accrued liability, which is a big, scary number, 8-digit number, is going to appear routinely on our financial statements now as an accrued debt or accrued liability. So. We're not going to be putting millions in, but there does need to be something, and then to invest it wisely. And again, this is one of the groups is PARS. They're actually, it's all municipal towns, municipal entities that are members of PARS, and it's not like they're going in and putting in some high risk, great leverage stock options. Annuities, it's a very low risk but better yield than having it sit in an account locally at a bank. But it is completely legal, absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Anything else that you wanted to share with us, Amy? All right. Thank you again.
Thank you, Amy and Michelle. Kim, you're welcome to come back now.
Come back and join us.
We will be skipping 8D because there's no MASC Regional Schools report. Moving on to 8E, the Special Education Review Updated Plan. I believe that's the superintendent and Mr. McGee.
I am going to pass the baton to Mr. McGee, but just to set this up, this is one of the actions in our district strategy for improvement. It was last year, and it is on the revised plan that I'll speak briefly to you later on. But because this is such a large action item, and we talked about this last year, here's the plan, here's what we're thinking. It's grown, we have an outside consultant, and so it's grown so large that we thought it makes sense to kind of treat this as a separate entity and track this and give a sense of what we're doing, because what was, again, maybe this was my bad assumption, was a shorter plan, has now morphed into at least a 3-year plan. And so I asked Dave, Mr. McGee, to put together a trajectory with the consultant about where we're going next. So I will pass the baton.
All right, thank you. So everybody's very excited tonight about finances and curriculum, so I'm going to be very excited about this plan. And I'm very excited that I didn't blow up the whole budget last year, and we actually have a little money left over, so. So anyways, to start, a lot of things in special ed are out of our control, and that's a lot of times people in my position stress over those things, you know, the move-ins, just the things that we have no control over. So it's really a waste of energy because we just have to deal with it as it comes, and I think the district has dealt with it. So this plan is actually a well thought out plan, and we have buy-in from all the principals, the whole leadership team. Some districts can do an evaluation, and it's more of a canned evaluation, so they say, let's just spend X amount of money, have somebody come in, write a report, look at compliance. So we're really sort of diving deep into, let's get at the things that are not so apparent, not just compliance and timelines, but let's talk about, staff culture, service delivery models, things that really matter to kids, like how do we improve their scores, or just overall social emotional functioning, not just academic scores. So we had hired Mr. Alan Bloom. So I had met Alan years ago when I was taking graduate courses at Simmons. So he's been a professor for 23 years. So he was actually teaching special ed teachers, and he's very versed in the law, the accommodations, modifications, the whole process. And then he since retired and went out on his own. So he's he's very well thought of in the community for these types of evaluations, and he's working all over Massachusetts. So he has also done some work with us. He's done some trainings in the past. He's met with individual teams. So I would say he's very well thought of, and people trust him. That's the most important. If you're going to bring somebody from the outside, they have to trust him, and we gave him really full permission to, we want to know the good, the bad, and things that we need to improve. So I think he's been very well received and in every capacity. So I think everybody is sort of on board. And again, we're not just looking for a canned report, come in here and, make us feel good or make us feel bad. So I'm sure it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So the first year, I think if you look, there was sort of the activities that we did. So we had really wanted to be sure that the leadership team was on board, that we met together and said, what are we looking for and how do we want to approach this? And as Brian said, it's sort of, we initially thought of doing the middle school and high school first because it's a little bit more complicated, but then we said, we really can't do that. If we're talking about an evaluation, it has to be K through 12 because we have transitions, we have kids, obviously if kids are struggling in high school and middle school, what happened in elementary school that would cause that. So again, we all met together and sort of outlined what we wanted to do. Myself and Kim and Anna spent, I think it was a grueling 3 days, pouring through 16 random special ed records, and Alan developed a form that, it's really, when you break down an IEP, there are, I forget what it was, but over like 55 individual components that have to be sort of, documented and, articulated. So we gave us, we went through a process where he said, let's look at these and, doesn't meet this criteria. And we found that they would, normally well written, but there was still improvements and I think that's not unusual, that we need more consistency in the way schools write IEPs, because we have 3 different elementary schools, different teams, different chair people. So one of the things is that we wanted to provide some consistency. We did a comprehensive survey of 295 staff. So the principals actually, I think, held their staff captive and said, we're doing the survey now during our staff meeting. We sent out this parent survey to every parent in the district on an IEP, which I think was about, it's 450 or so, and 92 responded, which is a good number. That's almost 10, that's a good percentage of a survey. We had an end of the year meeting with Alan Bloom to say, okay, now what? So he's got this initial information, and it's a lot. He's got a ton of information, but now it's like, what do we do with all this that we know? And then he did some initial analysis on he's looking at the DESE website and how is Triton compared with other districts, graduation rate, dropout rate, number of students on IEPs, those sorts of things. So then as far as actually this year, the next step is to go a little bit further and not only, besides the staff survey that we did, it was on an online SurveyMonkey, we're going to randomly select teachers at each elementary school to have a one-on-one interview with him, 20 minutes apiece. So we have a regular ed teacher, special ed, related service provider, ETC, principal, and I think IA, to really he's going to generate a series of the same questions It's going to be confidential, and what he's really looking for is themes. So you're going to get some people that say everything is great, and some people might say everything's horrible, but he wants to see, during these interviews, is he noticing some themes in terms of what people are saying, positive or negative. He's going to be doing some observations in various classrooms in the district. He's also going to be calling parents, random parents, and asking them if they want to participate in an in-person or phone interview. And then we anticipate our report will be ready by the end of maybe early spring or earlier. But one thing we do want to accomplish this year that we do know that we want to have a comprehensive training in IEP development and the way they're written with all special ed staff and related service providers across the district. Because he did, a couple years ago, he did an all-day training, but then there's been some turnover. So we really want to make sure we're on the same page in terms of where we're focusing. Let's see. So then phase 3, I think the last paragraph, which Brian had added, and I'm in full agreement with, it's going to be a fluid process because we're sort of, I'm giving you an update on where we are, but we're not going to really know where we're exactly going until the end of this year once he's done with everything and he's got his report done. But we do want to do is, he's doing the training this year on the IEPs and progress reports. We want to be able to do a record review next year and see, are people following the guidance that he gave them during the training? And this is critical because I know it's called a special education review, but there has to be a joint training with all regular ed and special ed teachers because there still is, and I've been in this profession for 25 years, and Monique, you can probably agree, there still is sometimes a disconnect between responsibilities, roles and responsibilities. Whose responsibility is it to do what? And sometimes there's confusion around, accommodations and modifications. Whose responsibility is it? And I think, and again, if all means all, then we want to provide the best education for all students. I will say that it does get more complicated as the kids go into middle and high school because you have a content teacher that has 120 kids, and say there's 30 or 40 with IEPs. I mean, I think it's really there has to be a lot of communication, between the special ed and regular ed staff to make sure that the kids are getting what they need. And then I think, since I've taken this position, I sort of, inherited. We've had sort of a similar model for years. But Triton seems to be heavily based on pull-out models, where a lot of the kids are getting pull-out services. So we'd like to look at some other opportunities of getting the special ed teachers into the classrooms. Are there ways we can look at the schedules or the staffing or resources to say, because right now a lot of times the teachers are seeing kids maybe for 45 minutes to an hour, but they're in the regular classroom for 5 hours a day. So it's really going to be a concerted effort with the regular ed and special ed staffing. So just looking at, are there ways we can change the model a little bit and change the staffing ratios? And or, we talked often about how many IAs we have in the district. Can we at some point, in certain situations, say I would rather have one professional teacher than 2 or 3 IA, it's the same money value, but it's a different, having more professional staff sort of in the classrooms with teachers. So it's a big undertaking. It's very complicated because there are a lot that, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think we have the right person that's helping guide us through that process. So that's sort of the overview. Any questions?
So if I'm just going to add one thing is that in speaking with Alan, there are other districts that he has worked with to do a report like this. Like David said several times, there are tons of consultants. We hire them, they come in, they look, they give you the canned 400-page report. We wanted to build an organic report, and we want to follow through. And it's interesting talking to Alan how many districts start this process and then stop it because it's, oh my gosh, really? I didn't want to say that. We are committed to doing this process. And you will get the report. We're not telling you anything yet. We have some preliminary information that we've identified, and as David mentioned, on number 5 on year 2, which is this coming year, there's some specific training about developing progress reports that we know, concrete. We're ready to start doing some training on that. But as far as the rest of the meat, if you will, as David referenced, it's about that relationship between regular and special education. And that doesn't happen overnight. But once we have that report, that is going to be the basis of our actions moving forward. So this isn't a report saying, here's all the findings. This is a report saying it's coming. And there will be things that we're not going to like to see, but we have to talk about them, put it on the table, and find a way forward.
Questions? Monique?
I just want to make a comment. This situation with models, if this was easy to solve, it would have been solved. And I won't say every, because that's, a lot of districts struggle with this. Yeah. And if this is really going to be a change, it's going to warrant a big investment on everybody's part, and it might be a financial investment too, because of all the training and monitoring and the culture change. Like, I worked in a school where this worked. We had a great model, but we also had a principal that wasn't taking no for an answer. She's on a school committee now. She must be a lot of fun. And, but anyway.
Remember, October 1st. October 1st. You're not gone yet.
No. But what I'm saying is it's a big job to do, because all over the country, that's all you read about, special ed journals.
Well, and I would say that investment of finances, potentially, I think the biggest investment is time. And I think that we have to be patient. We have to be honest and patient.
And I think
two things that are hard to do.
His role is to tell us what we would need to do in order to make this work, and then our job as a community and Triton is to figure out what can we do. And it may not be, there's one example of this year that after last year having the discussion and working with Alan, Beth made a change at the 6th grade level that the special ed teacher is now more in the classrooms because there was a group of students that it made sense. So it might be, we can't do a sweeping change in every single classroom in every school, but there could be a situation where, if you have a grade level where kids, maybe you have 7 or 8 kids with learning disabilities, and they're better off with that support in the classroom. So rather than pulling them out, and that's why I don't know if I wrote it this way, but I talked to Alan last week and talked about like pilot programs. Let's bite off, not more than we can chew, but if there's a situation that makes sense, let's try to change that model and then monitor the model over the school. Because you're right, we couldn't, it could very well mean in order to implement everything, we would need many more staff, and we all know that's not likely to happen. So I think we have to sort of look at individual circumstances and say, this makes sense. Oh, yeah. Let's see, how old am I? 51, yeah. No, you're right. It is but that's what we should be obligated to do. And again, there's a difference between what we should do and what we can do. But I think, over the years we've certainly have added programs and added resources here to help sort of put that forward. So it can be overwhelming, but we can't just be overwhelmed. We have to say, let's pick some things that we can make some changes with, and because his charge is just give us the report that recommends, and with all our feedback, what needs to be done. And again, it's going to take some time, like anything.
Deb?
Oh, yes. This is kind of a two-parter. It is a group that does the IEP?
Correct.
Is input from a group?
Yep.
Who ultimately has the responsibility for the IEP? Whose name's on the bottom line? Is it an individual or is it the group?
Principals typically sign the IEP for that school. I sign IEPs for certain children and kids in out-of-district places. But yeah, the authority is basically saying we are taking responsibility that this is a legal document, and here's what we're going to do. So that's, but I think there are some changes we can make, because also too, if the IEPs are not written very succinctly, then a regular ed teacher might say, well, wait a second, it doesn't say, and Monique, I'm sure you know this from being, it doesn't say that this accommodation is needed. So we have to make sure that we have everything written in that document so that there is no question of what the student needs. So this is not a choice. So in other words, you do not have a choice of whether you're going to do this or not. This is a legal document.
Right.
The team has agreed upon this, and it's not an option, you know, because once there's a little bit of ambiguity, and again, not to, I think, the regular teachers take very seriously trying to provide the whole curriculum to a student. So when you have a student on an IEP that might not be able to do, you know, that just has the essential concepts, you know, they're really passionate about wanting to make sure that we're meeting standards. But again, with kids with disabilities, we have to find a way to, the kids are going to need accommodations, they're going to need modifications, and they're going to get, they may get to the same place, but just differently, just in a different manner, so.
Did you have a part two? Or was that part
No,
two?
that's, we're good. I'm good.
Thank you. Linda?
Also, teachers interpret IEPs differently, too. In the long run, I first want to commend you guys for digging into this, because I know it is going to be a lot of work. But in the end, there's so much money that goes into special education. If you can find a model, co-teaching that works, it will be beneficial, and probably our special education costs could go down. I just think it's great to see that the district is taking on this initiative, because having the teacher and the special ed teacher be on the same wavelength for a child is only helpful for the district.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Can I just put one piece of honesty out there? I don't see it going down, the costs. I mean, if we were going to co-teach, so there was a time when we had a special education teacher per grade level, and that made it very doable, more doable for co-teaching. In many cases, we have a teacher covering 2 grade levels. So if we were to implement a true co-teaching model, we would be adding a lot of staff. So, I mean, that would be great. I'm not saying we're adding lots of money. I think the bigger piece is the focus on how do we use the resources we have to do better for the kids, period.
I'm thinking that if you have the students at the elementary level, if you can get them understanding math facts and literacy, reading at grade level before they reach the middle school, you wouldn't have some of the special education issues you have.
Potentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Other comments? I just have one question, Dave. I know you mentioned at one point that we might have somebody who would be willing to take up the CPAC again, and I see that as probably a big part of this. Has there been any progress on that front?
Yes, I met with an individual last week, Jen Boylan, and she has agreed to take on that task. So we have our first meeting in October. It's not scheduled, but it's our basic rights workshop, and we're going to send out a letter to all the parents to help her, because we need we had chairperson, a treasurer, and a secretary. So yes, we have. That just happened last week.
That's a CPAC action. So
Yeah.
that's a CPAC has to gather and vote her in. But it doesn't sound like there's a competitor, since it was, yeah. It's a very
Excellent. That is
excellent.
wonderful news.
Yes, it is.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we will move on. 8F, the monthly report of the superintendent of schools, please.
Yes, so you have some non-routine schedule items in regards to school opening. After a very busy year last year and a late start to summer, actually students came back exactly 10 weeks from the day they walked out the door, which is a short summer. But everyone came back excited. It was a very hot first week, as you all know, and so my sincere thanks to all of the teachers who endured some incredibly hot classrooms with students. So as far as weather, it did not cooperate, but it was a very good start to the year. A couple things to point out, we talk about back-to-school events and kindergarten orientations and open houses, but last year we started talking about some new things we're doing at the middle school, because again, that's that first transition. So last year, they started a locker night, and that was repeated again this year, incredibly well attended. It wasn't just 7th graders, a lot of 8th graders came to find their locker, even though they knew the building. It's just that opportunity to come in and make sure they're all set. And then the 7th grade did have a full week of non-traditional schedule and had routine events and orientation events. And one of those that I noted here was a mini Y Triton, and it was a large handful group of students from across the high school that did an assembly for the 7th grade students for about an hour, talking about all the wonderful aspects of Triton to get them excited to, if they're starting in 7th grade, to already possibly think about other schools for high school, to get kids excited. So it was a very well, everyone responded really well to that. Obviously it was well attended because they didn't have a choice. As far as a Pine Grove School update, just to make sure you are aware, half the north wing is functional. We opened school. The plaza, the parking lots is all, it's binder code. It's not finished pavement. It's absolutely a work in progress. It's safe. Spending a lot of time with police chiefs and construction people, making sure everything was buttoned up. Phase 2, which is the second half of the north wing to the left there, which will be the art room, the music room, support staff, kids club room. Those will all be coming online roughly October 20th is the latest estimate. Then we start the phasing on or about November 1st. The upstairs of the south wing, which is to the left as you come in, then roughly mid-February, March. The lower half of that south wing is phase 4, and then phase 5 is next summer, and that's literally the entirety of the art gallery and the whole east wing. But again, the key here is the hardest part has been finished. The entire infrastructure of that school was replaced in 9 weeks. From the moment they walked out on June 26th, literally, they almost got kicked out the door, Christine and the gang out of the office, and they were working 3 shifts, 24 hours a day at the beginning of the summer, and then 2 shifts the balance of the summer. So the whole water service, all the electrical service, the data, plumbing, all of that going in is entirely new. So if you haven't had an opportunity, certainly during open houses, or if you'd like a tour, please let me know. We can schedule something. We had talked about a community event and giving the community tours. Certainly right now you would walk in the main entry and go into the office, and that's about it. If we waited until the end of October, it's the rest of the north wing. If we wait till the holidays, it will be the all-purpose room as well. So again, the all-purpose room and cafeteria was supposed to be done for right now. Unfortunately, we've had lots of discussions about this. The beams, that is moving along. Currently it's December 18th, I believe, on the schedule, so that when the students come back from the holiday break, the cafeteria and all-purpose room will be open. And at that point, we're going to plan on some community tours, because that room, the entryway in that room and the whole north wing is going to be absolutely stunning. So certainly that's, again, I'll say it one more time, every time I have the opportunity to say thank you to the maintenance and the cafeteria folks from Pine Grove, and the folks here in the middle school, high school kitchen, because both staff, the Pine Grove staff, is functioning every day here and then transporting all the food over to Pine Grove, and the gym is split in half, and it's a temporary cafeteria, and then they're setting things up and warming boxes, serving, breaking it all down, and doing it again the next day. So they are beyond good sports, so thank them. Quick update, the middle school and high school aligned schedule. Again, it wasn't a significant change for the high school. It was that full day rotation was the major change, a much more significant change for the middle school. Early reports say very positive. I have asked Al McCrae and Heidi Mongeau, the assistant principal, to come in November to give you a report. We figured after the months of September and October, we can give you a good solid assessment of how things are going. It's not perfect. There were absolutely bumps. There were hiccups. There were, oh my gosh, where am I supposed to go? What do we do with these kids? But by and large, it seems to be a positive change. And then I think every year the goal is going to be to make and take better and better advantage of that. Call it the G block. You'll hear more about how that block can be truly used for interventions for students. Raptor, we've had a lot of discussion. Surveillance cameras, so that 64 of them are in operation around the district. There are signs at all the main doors. You probably don't even notice them in the hallways. They're so small. But all the main entrances, all the major hotspots, main hallway intersections, it is being recorded during about a half hour before school and a half hour after school, and then they're on motion sensors beyond that. We have 30 days of footage. Already live watched one student vandalizing a vending machine and walked right out and talked to him. So, so already it's payback for that ice cream that got stolen. I didn't. It wasn't me. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it was someone who was literally not even setting down to do it. Just kind of in passing noticed it. So they're not. So that's the key point. They're not monitored. There will be a monitor and a 55-inch screen in each office with the kind of the hot spots that the principals and administrators want to keep an eye on. But the vast majority of cameras are there and they're recording. And if something happens, we have the footage to go back and look at. So those are in place. And then the ALICE training, we're getting set up so that all the faculty and staff during the October faculty meetings will be doing the training. It's an e-learning training. We then have our certified instructors getting certified October 4th and 5th. We'll then be using the November faculty meetings or time frames to do full faculty, full staff trainings, and from there slowly roll out exercises, drills, start with tabletop exercises. We're not going to go. We've heard stories about districts that use, airsoft guns and don't tell teachers, and I don't believe that we learn by being petrified. So we're going to take this slowly, but we are going to be ALICE certified. Homework guidelines, just to report to you that we have a plan in place. Not only do we have guidelines, but we have a plan in place to monitor those and make sure that we are keeping track. That is going to be a routine discussion with our leadership team. All of the principals went over those at their first faculty meetings, and so that is going to be a routine topic of discussion. If as I shared with parents, if there's a question or a concern, please contact the teacher. If there's a concern beyond that, contact the principal. If there's a concern beyond that, contact me. 40 assets, we had done the survey last year just to report out some of that data. None of the data that we saw was an anomaly, very much mimicked nationally the data that we were seeing or expecting. Now we're in the process of trying to figure out, you've met Tina Lose, we have this resource that is through the Newburyport Youth Services. I hope it's a long-term. Currently, the model is that it's not long-term. I think Tina is incredibly effective, so I think that they're going to find a way to make it long-term. But we're trying to figure out how to put a person in place so that we have a district resource so that that person is responsible for making these coordinated efforts with all of our community resources. We don't have those people because we're 3 small towns. But to coordinate those services so that there is an entire community effort, because these 40 assets are not built by schools alone. And then just to note the change in the school year calendar that you approved in August, because it was a change for the Jewish holidays. Any questions? I'll be certainly happy to answer them.
Dina? I'm glad to hear that the middle school participated in the mini Y Triton.
Yeah.
That's something that we have identified before as an issue that needs to be addressed, not only for the students, but I'm hoping that at some point we are going to do something more substantial for the parents as well, beginning at 7th grade, or maybe even 6th grade.
I think we've talked about beginning at 5th. Yep.
Yeah, because the parents ultimately will make the decision where that child will go for high school. But I'm glad that the students are engaged, and I love the fact that the high school students were pretty much running that program for them. That's kudos to everybody involved. That was great.
And I just will say, students are the best instructor of students. I took on a student advisory, and I'm so excited. So Kim's been doing it, so this is old news for her. But so I have a freshman advisory, and I'll stay with them for 4 years. And so we met today, and Lily Fulford, who several of you know, was in as a senior to talk to the freshmen, and they're still, deer in the headlights, not even knowing. And I spoke with them, and it was good discussion, and then she starts talking, and they're listening and talking. I'm like, what did I do? What? So, I mean, there is absolutely a benefit of students listening to students.
Paul?
So I just do have a question about that mini Y Trident. Was there an administrator that was involved as a catalyst in that? I know it was student-run, but...
Was there an administrator? I mean, it was done between Catherine Dawes, the principal, and Ellen McCrae as the principal, yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, so Brian, on the student advisory group too, I just want you to know that we have personally invited them to come for the superintendent evaluations. They're going to be participating in that.
So I got a whole year, right? I mean, I got some runway here.
And then
yeah, exactly.
So the other question I have, Brian, is on these glue lambs that have termite damage, is that the old ones that are in there or the new ones that are coming in that have termite damage?
No, so again, I'll do this as quickly as possible. So the glue lambs, everyone's been in the all-purpose room. The beams that go up and across and down, that is the entirety of the structure of that building. There are 6 rows of them. After the original investigation of the building and the plans, when they started to dig in the old glue lambs, they're all eaten out to varying degrees. So what they're doing is the entire building has been reinforced with staging and cables. $353,000 the town spent just to reinforce this, and now they're cutting them, reinforcing them, steel, rebar, and this thing will be ready for the next 150 years.
And I just have one last question. On these personnel changes, like people that are no longer with us, is that all of the employees that go, or is it just professional status teachers?
No, that's any change.
Anybody that leaves should be listed in
Coming
this?
and going, yep.
Okay.
Yep. So if there's ever someone that you know went or came and isn't on there, please let me know. Because the intention is every in and out is here.
Okay, I'll
Not
talk to
every
you afterwards.
change. Say that again?
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
And I'll just note, Paul, there are pictures of the glue lambs up on the renovation site, or I can probably hopefully access them on my phone from here, and I can show you exactly what they look like and where they're going to be ripping out and replacing them.
If you all want to take a tour, this would be the time to see that. It's ugly in there, but if you really want to know what the issue is, we should schedule a tour, and then we have to.
Before October 1st.
You can come, honorary member. But, I mean, we'll have to put hard hats and vests, and they're going to want to stop everything, so, because they're going to town right now. But it's a sight to be seen, I will tell you that. It looks nothing like the all-purpose room you saw before.
Are we still within budget?
Yes, because this was there were significant contingencies built in because it was a renovation. So we knew when we opened walls that there were going to be issues discovered. So yes, it's still well within that budget.
So there are build contingencies, there are design contingencies, and there's another one.
Owners.
Owners contingency, thank you. So this is the $1.4 million that's in the build contingency. About $400,000 of that has been spent. So there is still $1 million. That's before we even get to the design and any of that. So that's how projects come in under budget. You know, when you say it's not because they cut anything out, it's because they had assumed contingencies here and here, and things went well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Still a long way to go. But again, the big stuff has been done.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. On to we're on to item 9A, the school committee evaluation process. We had tabled this from the last meeting due to the fact that we only had 5 members here at the last meeting, and it was suggested that it would be better put off until the entire committee could be here for it. I hope you have had a chance to review it because there's a lot of input and information that's here. I'll go over I guess just some of it, on public relations, which was goal 1, which was the improve, well, there are a number of action items under there, but it was basically to improve trust and confidence from the community. It was really rated no progress by 6 members and significant progress by 2 members. There was 1 member who did not include a rating on that. by and large, if you look through the comments, it was due to the large amount of time that budget discussions took up last year, and also the lack of tracking. So those are both noted multiple times. Goal 2 was advocacy. There are a number of actions that you'll see there as well. It was rated no progress by 3, significant progress by 4, and met by 2. There's a lot of commentary under there as well. And then as you go into the back sections, which are just you rated each one unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, exemplary, or no data, not applicable. I'll just go over kind of the highs and lows. The highest average was the committee superintendent relationship with an overall category rating of 3.55. And the low was was E, community stakeholders and climate, with an overall category rating of 2.87. And the total overall rating for those final sections that use that 5-point rating system was 3.22. I'll open it for discussion. Tina, I'll start.
When I looked at all of these, and also since we had access to everybody else's filled out self-evaluation forms, I thought that overall we pretty much thought alike. There were some outliers. One thing that I wanted to address, and I was going to mention this when we talk about the strategic plan as well, but the community stakeholders and climate, which Narissa, you had noted was our lowest scoring area. I think we really need to look at that, and I know it's in the strategic plan, but my question is, how are we going to make things different? You know, we meet with the town officials through the DCC, but that's not always well attended. We've tried Facebook and Twitter and everything else. I think we really need to try and think outside the box as to what other different things we can do. I know in the past we've done school committee meetings at different locations within the district, and that didn't seem to make a big difference, but maybe that's something that we need to look at again. But that's one thing that really stood out to me that needs attention immediately.
Other comments? Paul?
I would just follow up on that, Dina, and say maybe what we should be doing is reaching out to other school committees that are districts, you know, that are multi-town districts as opposed to single unit towns. Maybe they have something that they've done that could be more effective than what we have.
It's a way to investigate it, absolutely.
Other comments? Okay, when you come on Saturday, I'm going to ask you to bring this back with you, because I think this is going to be part of our goals discussion. Um, 9B, the superintendent evaluation process goals, please.
All right, so I thought the version I put in here said draft on it, but it doesn't say that. So my thinking is, again, we're doing my goals aligned with everyone else's goals now, so it's the same as a teacher, an administrator, school committee. Oh, did we skip something?
Oh, you're right, sorry. Yes. My bad. Can I have a motion to receive and file the aggregated results of the 2017-2018 school year school committee self-evaluation, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
I'll second it.
Okay. I think I have a second, right?
Yep.
We're good? Okay. All in favor? All right, unanimous? My apologies, Brian.
No, thank you. Follow the rules. So as I was saying, my process is the same as everyone else's in the district now. So goals are generally set with all educators, administrators by October 15th. So my thinking was to propose goals to you tonight, take them away. We can add that to the discussion on Saturday if you believe that my goal should be amended, because I think it's important. And when we get to talk about the district strategy, there's a new page in there that just kind of talks about the alignment, that if we're saying the strategy is our focus and this is what we need to focus for this year, then everything should be aligned to that. So this is a draft, and then I would say that we would put it back on the schedule for October to make it a final approval. But again, so for the student learning goal, it's aligned to Condition 1, instructional practice, Condition 2, curriculum, and Condition 5, which is resources and materials, to address needed updates and changes in our instructional delivery model and delivery of curriculum. Changes requiring the purchase of curriculum materials will have funding sources identified, and those requiring change in practice will be formally detailed with next steps. So the two actions, I'm not going to read verbatim or the rest of the document, but again, the review of special education, that is a significant priority. Obviously, David has taken the lead on that, but I have a significant role as well. And then the formal review of history and social studies. Sorry, I wrote it there. Sciences. Sorry, that's why it's draft. Again, those may not be direct actions that I'm taking for the majority of the work, but it's my responsibility to figure out how we do that. So there's going to be a lot of good people coming together to work on that and put heads together to figure out exactly how that happens. But then I've got there, again, I don't need to read them for you, the intended outcomes and then the evidence. Obviously, the evidence for the special ed review is that there is a report that we're producing by the end of the year, and then that we have a formal plan in place moving into next year. How we accomplish that is a very different discussion, but again, the goal is to first have that information and make some decisions. Goal two is professional practice goal. It is aligned with Condition 3, social and emotional wellness and well-being, and Condition 4, communication. And the goal I will read: to identify new methods and means of engaging, I'm using those terms specifically, methods and means of engaging families in the larger Triton community in the day-to-day events and successes of the district through sharing of timely and relevant information. This information will help those not in our schools feel connected to the work we do, and for parents of our students, it will help engage them in the work we do each day. Further, the information received from parents and constituents will assist in evaluating our effectiveness. The three actions is this annual report. This annual report is going to happen this year. It will be out by November, mid-November, as we had talked about earlier in the fall. But the reality is to have this be a meaningful report. Not only is it narrative, but it's MCAS and accountability data, where we just literally, was that yesterday, started to get that information pulling through. We're going to review it for our first time with principals on Friday. But with that information needs to be public and available. We probably won't have an audit report done, but we'll have a very concrete numbers that we're presenting to the auditors as far as the starting point for the way we closed fiscal 18. We want to have that data in this report. So we're not waiting until November 15th to write it, but there's a lot of information that we're going to have to backfill into that as far as the data about our district performance and spending that we'll have to hold that off. But that report will go out on or before November 15th. And again, just to confirm, that's going to go out electronically, posted to the website. We're going to mail a postcard, a double-sided postcard that will go to every residential address, a bulk mail address. So every residential address in the towns of Newbury, Raleigh, and Salisbury will get a card that leads people to the website. And we are going to hand produce some copies to put in senior centers, libraries, town halls, and wherever else across town people will be willing to take a few of them and have them there. Expanding the use of social media, again, we're using social media. I think we can use social media better. I know I'm not great. I need to get into the habit of Twitter and Facebook being the way I think. So my goal is to use it more regularly and routinely, not just for the important updates, but also just those non-routine and routine visits to classrooms and such, because it really helps families and the community get engaged. And then also to create an additional, I'm calling it a superintendent coffee. I don't know whether that's the actual vehicle, but to have another informal opportunity where I'm out and about. We talked about meeting for a cup of coffee at the Agawam Diner. I'll be there from 7 to 8. Or wherever it is, to provide other opportunities where I'm out and accessible, and parents, folks from the community, at a playground at one of the schools at 9 a.m., and parents who have young kids at home can come out and let the kids play and talk to me, whether that's good things, bad things, concerns, praise, and again, just another opportunity for parents in the community to provide feedback and engage with me in our success. And then the final goal is district improvement, and this gets back to what you were saying, Dina, is how do we do this? So how do we align? And so there's two things. It's realigning our school improvement planning process. We currently have it perfectly aligned to the budget process, and while that's good for informing the budget process, that's not really good for the process of forming the school improvement plan, because we have school councils that we beg to get in place by October, and then we lose them in June, and then sometimes they don't reconvene. So it's putting a school improvement planning process that is the school year, and then item 2 is taking a look at the whole way we do budgets. I think it does much about a message to our towns to say, look, we're going to rethink how we do things. We thought it was good. It's not going well. We don't want to repeat any element of what occurred last year, other than the state advocacy. We want to keep that going. But as far as where we landed with our relationship with the towns, it doesn't feel good to end a year when the schools are at odds with the towns. And to start the year that way isn't a good thing. So obviously the towns are invested in their schools, but it comes back to money, and that's where the tensions come from. So how can we rethink that process? I don't have the answers right now, but that's as much working with you as it is stuff I do on my own. But I think that needs to be one of my goals, so that this year we find a different way. What that way looks like is remain to be seen. And again, outcomes and evidence is listed there. Each of the actions is aligned to the standards in the rubric. I put a copy of the rubric and attached it to this. Be happy to answer any questions, comments, thoughts, or also would love to have my involvement be part of your discussion on Saturday.
Dina is ready.
Probably will come as no surprise. I have a few edits. Just a couple of comments. I think these are really good goals, but I think under goal number 1, under evidence, we need to be a little bit more specific about when these actions will occur. Like under number 1, it should be by June 2019, if that's when that report's going to be done. And spring of 2019, I'd like to see that stated as maybe May 2019, under number 2 for the evidence. You following where
Gotcha.
I'm at?
Yep.
Just so that, I think when we're too open-ended with things like
Absolutely.
that,
Yep.
it tends to fall off the radar.
Absolutely.
Under goal number 2, I like the fact that the annual report will be done in mid-November, and actually I think that's the perfect time every year to do that, because you're right, Brian, we need to include those MCAS scores, and if we're not getting them until October, we can't offer the most recent and valid information if we don't wait until November. So if mid-November becomes the annual distribution time, I think that's fabulous, as long as it's done consistently.
Agreed.
On number 2, it says, through a survey, parents will report favorable views, blah, blah. I think, when will that survey be completed by? And I think if you do start to do these routine informal meetings across the district, a calendar of dates would be helpful to know. For number 3, again, I've already addressed it, and so have you. We really need to identify how we're going to do things differently, and I do think that is a goal that is not only yours but ours as school committee members. So that certainly is something that I hope we focus on the workshop on Saturday.
I think that would be powerful for the two of us, the 9 of you and me, the 10 of us, to have an aligned goal in that regard.
Other comments?
I think you should do a video that we can post on Facebook and share in regards to the annual review. I've been thinking that since you mentioned it earlier.
So, okay, say more, Tina, about this video. It's your idea. You have to help me with.
So I'm so excited that we're going to be doing the annual report and that we're going to be sending out postcards to every resident. But I think to gain traction, especially where a lot of the conversations have been had on social media, if you can because you're such a good speaker and communicator, it might be nice for you to speak to the annual report.
A state of the district.
Yes.
So is it so I get what you're saying. Are you saying a 2-minute video that introduces the report and say, hey, go check it out, or actually an audio and video form of the report?
No, I don't think any. I think just to introduce it,
I
to
can
get,
talk.
to drive people to.
Gotcha. So a snippet, a 60, 90, 120-second video.
Yeah, unless anyone thinks otherwise.
I'm thinking
I think Deb's
Oh,
a hearty no to a long video.
Yeah, I think 2 to 3 minutes is usually what they say is an effective time
I like that.
to capture someone's
We know some people that are good at it, too.
I was just going to agree, especially since this is something new to the district and to parents and to residents. I think it would be really helpful for like a quick explanation of what it is, why we did it, and you could put it, there's so many, Twitter, Facebook, all the
I think it'll make
all
you
the
more
social groups.
approachable too, especially if you're doing those coffee meet me and they're like, oh, he's not a scary guy. I don't think anyone thinks you're scary, but for people that don't know you, when they think of superintendent, they're like,
She's
oh,
backtracking.
wow. You know.
No, it was funny. When I was at Salisbury on the first day of school and doing orientation, and there was a mom who walked in. She's like, "It's so nice to meet you. I see your face all the time. We're friends on Facebook, but it's nice to see these people and meet them in person." So I agree.
I think she actually
nice way to
said,
make a
"Oh, you're
connection.
real."
Oh, you're real. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it
that
too
more.
for the people that, I think one of the challenges, and I know we'll discuss it when we go through our goals on Saturday in terms of communication and maybe not feeling like the school committee or the school is accessible and we don't know what's going on, people really won't have the excuse that they don't know what's going on because we're directing them to this report in different ways. Because the reality is not everyone's going to pick up the postcard and go to the site and read the report. I don't even know what the percentages are going to be. I'm assuming they're going to be low. But I think that video will just kind of put it over the top in terms of we're trying to reach you, and you don't really have an excuse to not know what's going on anymore.
Like it.
Other comments? Paul, are you? No. Not leaning forward.
No comments, Paul, about
I
the
guess
video?
actually I do have a comment though, Brian. I went to that thing at the MCAS, the national one, a while back, and I told you, 7 seconds. So if we do the Facebook, that's fine, but 7 seconds at a time.
7 seconds.
I'm telling you, that's it. That's
Go see the video.
That's the attention span.
No, but actually though, that's not completely true. If you have relevant content that you're putting out, which I believe Brian has a lot to say, I don't worry about being under a certain time. I think say what you're going to say, and if it ends up being more than 2 to 3 minutes,
It's a
that's
snippet
fine,
about
too.
the report. It's
right.
not
Right.
verbal.
Yeah, you're not
It's
going to
an
talk
audio
for,
report.
Yeah.
It's not a State of the Union.
Yeah.
Message received.
I just had one comment. So I think since you became superintendent, every single year you pull out your goals, and every single year I say, I think this is really aggressive. You have too much on here. And I think this is still aggressive, but I appreciate that every goal on here this year seems attainable, much more so than it has been in past years.
So thank you for recognizing that. And so some of my goals are other people's goals. So one of my goals is Kim's, one of them is Dave's. So, Michelle has none of my goals, so she gets a free pass. But no, it's, and I think that the same with the district strategy, when we get there in a few minutes and we briefly go through that, reasonableness needs to be. And I think that, we could do a district strategy that's 5 years long and a capital plan and, things, but there's a power in an annual report that says we're going to measure this throughout the year, at the end of the year, and reassess. So it needs to be achievable. So.
Okay. Any other comments? I'll ask you to bring this also back on Saturday. I don't know that we're going to use any of these documents, but I want to have them there for reference because I think they are very powerful guiding documents as we're moving into our goal-setting process. I need a motion to approve the 2008, oh no wait, we're not approving. Oh, as a draft, sorry, we are approving. To approve the 2018-2019 goals for the superintendent of schools as a working draft with final approval to be confirmed on October 10th, 2018. Monique?
I'll second.
Maureen is a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay.
Moving on to 9C, School Committee Representative to the North Shore Education Consortium Board of Directors and Crest Collaborative Board of Directors. I believe this is the superintendent again.
Yep, so it's just a continuation of what we have. We are a member of both the North Shore Consortium and Crest Collaborative. We were with Crest when it was GLEC. We walked away because GLEC was falling apart. GLEC reformed itself as Crest and is a very viable organization for the first several years. Monique, by statute, I should say now, by regulation, it can be either a school committee member or the superintendent. Previously, it could be a superintendent or designee. So when it was GLEC, I sat as the assistant superintendent on GLEC. Christopher sat as the North Shore Consortium board member. There was a change. Now it's a school committee or the superintendent. It's mostly superintendents. Crest is a little more split. So at that point, I think it was last year that I started and represent on the Crest board as well. So this is just a continuation. On the Crest board, I'm an active board member, but I don't have any other leadership roles. For the North Shore Consortium, I didn't get my thumb up quick enough, so I'm chairing the finance subcommittee. But this is just a continuation of the exact same situation we had in previous years. But it's two separate motions because it's two separate boards.
Monique, did you have a question?
Which subcommittee are you on for Crest?
He's not.
You're not on any.
There are actually no active subcommittees currently.
There's no active
No,
subcommittees?
no.
I thought I misheard you.
Yeah. No, and then I'm chairing the finance. It was one of those years. Yeah. Again, this has been 1 year. I could be chairing another subcommittee by next week. Who knows?
Any other discussion? No? May I have a motion to appoint Superintendent Brian Forget as the Triton representative to the North Shore Education Consortium Board of Directors effective July 1st, 2018, please?
So moved.
Second.
A second by Linda. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. May I have a motion to appoint Superintendent Brian Forget as the Triton representative to the Crest Collaborative Board of Directors effective July 1st, 2018, please?
So moved.
Linda's a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous again. All right. Moving on to 9D, District Strategy for Improvement, a much shorter discussion of the updated district strategy.
Much shorter, yes.
Much shorter than last time. Yeah, we've already gone through this in detail, so.
Yeah, so this was it an hour plus last time? This is not an hour plus. So to take you through, page 1 of 13 is an updated, obviously, it's a new year. The background information is different. We're going into year 2, but the same structure, vision, core values, theory of action, conditions for success, strategic objectives, and strategic actions. So we have kept the vision, the core values, the theory of action, the 5 conditions for success, and the strategic objectives completely intact. I don't think any of those have changed. All the objectives are relevant. Our core values, respect, integrity, and excellence for all, have remained intact, and I believe people truly believe them. They appear on documentation. People refer to them. And so now I'm hoping that the conditions for success gain that same kind of, whatever the word is there, importance in what we do. So you saw my goals are aligned to the conditions for success. In My Learning Plan, which is the platform we use for all educator and administrator evaluations, as we're developing our goals, they'll actually have to check a box as they're developing a goal, which condition they're addressing through their goal, one or more. So the strategic actions are what did make some adjustments, and so I'll go through those quickly. On page 2 of 13, I'm going to give credit to our Assistant Superintendent, Kim Croto. So it's actually page 117 of the packet, sorry. It's 2 of 13 of the document. So we were talking about alignment, and this document is produced in Google Docs, so if it was produced in something different, you would have a much cooler and prettier graphic. But the concept of the district strategy needs to drive everything we're doing. If we're saying that these are the strategic actions that we believe are important in this coming year, then everything we do need to somehow align to that. The discussion about the budgets certainly talks about resources and communication. So it's all about those aligning everything we're doing. So you have in that top blue box the district strategy, which then drives the school committee goals, it drives district administrator goals, the 4 of us sitting here, and then school improvement plans. And then from the school improvement plans, that drives the school administrator goals, all the professional educator goals in the building, and then also professional development, which is where this discussion was born. Professional development isn't just this thing happening over the side where Kim and Anna sit around and say, ooh, what do we want to train people on this year? We're aligning our resources and our efforts to making sure that the things that we say we need to improve upon, we're improving upon. So again, just do you want to say anything else to that, Kim, or is that?
No.
Okay. Thank you. But just that's a new page just to align, to show that there's an alignment here, that hopefully everything we're doing as far as all of our planning is aligned to a common theme and a common effort. So again, very routine, page 3 of 13 speaks to the formatting or the formatting and the layout of the plan. So if I take you to page 6 of 13, or 121 of your packet, 1A is a new item. That is the development of a BRIGHT program. This is a program that I believe we mentioned to you briefly. There was some grant funding for planning. Beyond that, it is up to us to implement. We currently have a program in the middle school, lower middle school, servicing high school students who are medically fragile. Those students are aging out, which means that those resources will be freed up. And in doing that, this BRIGHT program, so it's a Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition, is a program that is designed to address those students who are out of school because of social, emotional, mental health, hospitalization, just struggling or home, anxiety bound, and we're not able to get them back in school. So this is not a program where a student comes in and becomes not a member of a program, but is serviced by a program. It's a temporary, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks. So we can transition these students in. If they're back in the building, it's better than they're at home or they're in a hospital. They're one step closer to being reacclimated back into the general setting. So that will obviously involve some significant planning. Megan Ober, as the Director of Guidance at the high school, has taken that on, obviously working with David and other special education staff about how we work that program. It is not necessarily a special education program. As we've said this several times, there are so many mental health issues that we're addressing, and these students are not on IEPs, they're not on 504s. So it's a big need, because when we're providing home tutoring or tutoring in a hospital and providing services, A, it's more costly when the student's not here, and B, it's just not better. It's not good for the student when they're not able to be here and participating with their peers in the school setting. So that is a new action. 1B, the alignment of the middle high school schedule, is really now written about the middle school schedule. There aren't significant changes for the high school, so this is about really fully utilizing that schedule. That will be a multi-year plan. Like I said, there were hiccups. It'll be better next year. It'll be better the year beyond. That 1C, we already spoke to that at length. 1D, increasing the use of available assessment data. Some changes here. This remains. We're at the innovation stage at the elementary level. We're at the program installation stage. We had talked about early adoption last year for the middle school, but I think it's more accurate to put that as a program installation. It's still early, and at the high school, we're still exploring. We need to get there, but again, as we've said several times, it's a change in culture, and culture changes are hard. So those remain as a focus area. And then 1E. Later on, I'll show you where we've taken items that we're saying are not a priority right now, but we're not ready to say we're not done with. We're all done to monitor them. Homework guidelines, I think, is a little too fresh at this point. We're not going to put that in the parking lot to say we're monitoring, because I think it's important that we're going to be very actively monitoring that this year. We're at full implementation, but now we have to make sure we're there. Yes.
Can I just ask a question? Under evidence, it says survey results in the spring. Who exactly are we going to be surveying? Is it going to be parents and students?
So the discussion was parents. I mean, We can survey students as well, obviously high school students.
I would think that that might offer valuable information as well.
In the previous surveys, we've done students, faculty and staff, and parents.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much
Good.
across the board for all of our surveys in recent days. And most surveys for the student level, we've done, depending on the content, 6 and up, sometimes 5 and up. But absolutely. Moving on to objective 2, the district will strengthen current instructional practices by using aligned curriculum to effectively engage and facilitate learning for all students across all curricular areas, regardless of ability. 2A is you heard from Anna about that tonight. I'm not going to say anything more about that. K-8 science implementation. We are early in that initial implementation. The grade 4 to 8 substance abuse, that is the life skills program. We've talked about that extensively. We'll call that initial implementation. Math and focus, we had that in full implementation, and we actually pulled that back. There was some work done at the end of last year where Kim and Anna brought back the entirety of it was the implementation team, right? The full team at the beginning. Again, we keep saying if we had so many more resources, this would be a very different scenario if we had dedicated people who were monitoring this. But it was an opportunity to take a step back, and I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but I mean, the result was an incredibly powerful meeting to bring everyone back together and kind of reassess where the holes still remain. So we agreed that should be pulled back, that we're not at full implementation there. We'll call it later initial implementation. But those 2B, 2C, and 2D are continuations of previous actions that are ongoing. And then 2E, the implementation of a comprehensive wellness curriculum for students in grades 7 through 12. We're exploring. Kim does have that on the plan, that is working with the Wellness Committee and incorporate everything from Tina Lose and the Essex County Asset Builder Network to putting some explicit human sexuality lessons that we'll bring to you in October, right? We're going to put that on the agenda to share with you some just, again, we're plugging holes at this point, no full curriculum implementation, but just some holes that we're going to fill this year with a handful of lessons at both the 7th and 8th grade. So that's a continued work in progress, but there is a larger global K through 12 wellness curriculum and effort that we need to discuss and review. Yes.
As when Mrs. Bates was talking, I do have a concern about the elementary level with the implementation of all these brand new things that you're bringing in and the support that they'd be able to continue this with, with fidelity.
Yes.
So we are pacing it out so that even though we're still in the initial implementation for Math and Focus, we're pretty much, I would say by the end of the year, be at full implementation. As we do walkthroughs, as we have ongoing conversations with the math specialists, we dipstick into what does the curriculum look like. And the work that we did really over the summer with the math specialist is looked at the flow of the curriculum. Because it is a challenging program, some of the concepts that they were teaching were out of grade level, which is great because you do want to extend and challenge those kids. But what they found is they were spending a lot more time on those kind of extension activities instead of meeting the grade level benchmarks. And that didn't happen across all grades and in every unit, but there were small pockets. So they worked with a Math and Focus consultant who is also in charge of making the shifts within the next edition of the Math and Focus. So we feel like we're almost like one step ahead. So we made some some really tiny changes within the curriculum with input from the teachers and the math consultants. Didn't change the curriculum, it changed the pacing a little bit so that efforts were were being placed where they needed to be. The teachers are much more comfortable in that particular curriculum. So now in year 4? Year 4 of this, I feel like we're almost at full implementation and they can kind of take a deep breath. So then ongoing is that kind of that layer of the science piece of it. And for that piece of it, it required a lot more in the pedagogy shift of inquiry-based. And so that to me has been less, I would say, of a lift than the than the math because of the complexity of what is taught and the amount of content. It's less than the math. So we really truly are staying in touch with what is too much for the teachers and what is too much, so that we're going into quantity and not quality of programs, because we want to be patient and let these programs mature so that you can really have the full benefits, or our students can have the full benefits from them. So that's another reason, just the way it worked out. The upper grades is really where the focus is going to be for the social sciences and the civic studies, because that's where the biggest shifts are going to be made. Once those shifts get made, we're going to continue to keep the conversation at the elementary, but we know that they're going to kind of come in afterwards. Just like the science at the elementary is coming in now. So it's almost like a reverse as far as where the focus shifts, so that we can distribute the efforts and the resources across the district, so that nobody has too much on their plate at one time, so that things kind of start to fall apart. So that was a really long answer for a short question.
No, I mean, I appreciate you elaborating on it. And I don't know if all the elementary schools do it, but are they starting to shift in the 5th and 6th grade where you have a content, science, math,
and that was actually in response when we were looking at some of our scores last year. Not to say that should drive all of our decisions, but we do take a look at those, and looking at the certain grade levels where there were teachers who specialized in the content, when it became more, the depth of it was much more significant, that folks who just naturally had an interest and really a strong knowledge base ended up, specializing in that at the 6th grade and the 5th grade. So this is the first year, I want to say, all of the grade levels, 5th and 6th, definitely 6th.
1/4, and then the other, everyone's 5th and 6th.
So we'll have like a math and science teacher, and then an ELA, and that will be kind of the social studies. So that, yes, I do think that is going to be a positive shift, and we see that happening more and more across the districts and the towns.
Any other questions? Okay.
So moving on to page 123, or page 8 of 13, so objective 3. 3A is PBIS, elementary. We remain at that initial to full implementation. Middle school and high school, it is exploration. It is still a priority, and speaking with the principals, they believe it is worth exploring. It's obviously a very different, it functions differently at the middle school and then on to the high school, but we still believe that it is a priority worth exploring at those levels. Maximizing the use of the Essex County Asset Builder Network. As I said, we're trying to figure out how to fund a position part-time. It's going to be a very small position, through the use of Kids Club funding, as that has some resources, and using those funds to reinvest back in a person that can help us organize these community resources. The developing of a community service requirement for graduation. We were looking at this because we're looking at this policy came up through the policy review for graduation requirements, so I am hopeful and confident that that will actually happen this year, that discussion will be reactivated. Again, 3D, the full-time wellness teacher is listed under this objective as well. And then exploring the use of the Safe and Drug-Free Schools grant. We had received that grant 2 years ago. We did some great planning, applied last year, didn't get that to continue the work, and we're going to get it this year. We hope. And then that will, again, that's just more money that will support this type of work in developing wellness. Again, we're a long way away from the wellness instruction and curriculum that we would like to have, but every little piece we can put in place is a benefit. Objective 4, expand the use of Aspen and Google Classroom. It provides families with monitoring, ability to monitor academic progress. There was an item there about changing from Aspen to another, potentially Infinite Campus. You'll see that's now dependent on funding. We're kind of stuck there for a while. So again, still being reviewed, still has some positive reasons to change, but it's a significant funding issue.
Dina has a question.
Can I ask a question on this? This has been a long time concern of mine, back when we had X2 and all of that, and we were promised over 5 years ago that we were going to have parents have the ability to access their students' grades and everything. So my concern here is, when would the survey, the parent survey, be done, and how are we going to let parents know at the beginning of this year that this will be available? I think there's got to be some message sent.
So that Aspen and Google Classroom is available?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's at the high school and middle school. There's a listing on the website that lists each teacher's time that they're available for extra help, and then it lists where their homework is posted. Vast majority are in Aspen and Google Classroom. There's an ongoing discussion about making that a single platform, as that's what I believe the contract requires that we can do. So that would be in place and then communicated with families through teachers, and then we'd be surveying later on about the use of.
But I think district-wide, that message has to go out that this will be available, because otherwise, I think probably at least half the parents in the district wouldn't have any clue that that's available.
Well, again, I mean, they're notified by teachers if it's available. At the elementary level, it's not as much in use. We don't have standards-based report cards, and there are some upper elementary classrooms using Google Classroom. But that is communicated out by requirement from all the teachers to which sites they're using. Obviously, grading is all in Aspen. More and more are using Google Classroom. Maybe there's a point in time where we shift to Google Classroom. I think more and more people are realizing it's easier, but it's not a grade book. It's not a lot of things. So that's an ongoing discussion. But that at the high school level has been communicated, and the middle school as well, especially the extra help posting and when they're available. Yep, because that's a requirement.
Right.
Absolutely. 4B we talked about. 4C, continue developing an informed, engaged advocacy base among families. That is a continued, that's an us, that's not just a me. Developing a district marketing strategy, I'm leaving that there. Whether or not that's doable, I know that was a goal last year. We can talk about that on Saturday, but even if it's in its simplest form, I believe there's a power in having a market strategy. And then, again, expanding the use of how we share information, website, social media, just continuing to always think of new ways to engage families. Objective 5, TLLT will be changing the focus, and we're actually going to be having district administrators work one-on-one with a partner and then shadowing each other. So we're excited about that. It's going to take us all out of our comfort zones, but another opportunity for us to align ourselves so that we can have inter-rater reliability when we are doing our evaluations. The facilities assessment, we have that capital. We keep talking about a 10-year capital plan. We've got to fund that facilities assessment. We ended the year with some excess and deficiency. We thought we might not. So now there's an opportunity, but that is the first step to be able to do that capital long-term plan. Continue to align the SIPs and the budget requests and the overall budget to this strategy. Continue to align all of our goals to this strategy. And then obviously 5E. 5E is the action to distribute the annual report. Page 126 is a new section. It's advancing and monitoring previous strategic actions. So you can see the tools that we're using for transition from 6th to 7th and 8th to 9th. It's not perfect. We're not saying it's going away, but there are no specific actions planned for this year. So we'll leave that there and something we'll continue to focus on, but with no specific actions. Again, the same with literacy instruction at the elementary level. It's a focus area. It's a high priority area, but there are no specific actions, so it remains here. The use of flex and win time. We've had lots of discussion about that. It's not perfect. I feel like there's a continued discussion about how we, again, flex and win time being when I need, flex time where there's a scheduled time in the day where students can get interventions that they need, but that may not be because they need to be, they're falling behind in a certain area. It might be that they've already covered a content and they need to be challenged in a specific area. So we have systems in place. We have computer-based systems that we're using, students have access to. It's not the best intervention. What we would love is to have additional people that could be there and working with these kids and expanding and challenging them where they need to be challenged, but that's a resource issue at this point. Increasing relevant technologies is obviously budget dependent.
Can I just add right there,
Yep.
because it is budget dependent, I think school committee needs to be listed as part of the responsible party.
I agree. Thank you for taking that. Again, trauma-sensitive schools, we continue to, we have the course running this spring. This fall, I'm sorry. I was thinking we're already at the spring, trying to get ahead. So it is running this fall, but again, that's, teachers are paying it for themselves. They do have their course reimbursement through the contract, but ultimately what we would like to be able to do is actually offer that training for all faculty and staff. But again, that's dependent on funding. But the course does continue to run. And then again, that reevaluation of the SIS that we spoke about. So, and then the final there on the top of page 127 is the Aligned Student Handbooks. We're going to be bringing those back to you in October. They're improved. Will they be perfect? I'm going to guess probably not. We'll continue to make edits and every year refine them to make them better. But again, that's going to be a specific action there. And then the items below are future items. They're items that we've said we need to address. We don't have a specific action. We haven't resolved them. We haven't figured them out. But we want them to stay on our radar because we do need to address them in the future. And the final page is definitions.
Dina? Can I ask, or add one more comment to number 5, monitor aligned student handbooks? Again, I think that's not only the assistant superintendent's
That's true, yep.
It's our responsibility as well.
Leadership team, yeah.
Any other comments, questions? None. Can I get a motion to approve the 2018-2019 district strategy for improvement as the basis for guiding actions and decisions within the district, please?
So moved?
Reed. Second by Linda. Any discussion? All in favor? Was that a yes, Monique? Were you in favor, or are you? Talk about it Saturday. We can't really talk. Well, I mean, I'm going to ask you to bring this on Saturday too, but we need a vote tonight. So, are you a nay or abstain? A nay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Subcommittee reports and action items under item 10. Linda is up first with Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee, please.
We have a meeting today, and we're just discussing preliminary strategies for advocacy. Our next meeting for policy with MASC is September 25th.
And if I can just take one item,
say.
we were just going to, just to give to you tonight, you have a packet that went to the policy subcommittee tonight. This is nothing that needs your approval, but last June, it should be 2 policies and then 2 packs of forms. Last June, you, very last minute, very 11th hour, had to approve a trip. There was some concern. The forms didn't necessarily align with the policies. Went back and reviewed. There are 2 policies, student late night and overnight travel, and field trips. Field trips, I approve with the principals, and that goes through Kim. Late night and overnight travel comes to you. We had a form for out-of-state travel. There's no policies that requires any approval for out-of-state. A lot of times we do field trips over the border and it's 20 minutes away, so that doesn't need to come to you. So you have one packet that Annex 3 was the old forms. There were 3. There was the out-of-school field work request, overnight out-of-state field visit request, and then district-sponsored international field visit request form. Those I've replaced with 2 forms. One is the out-of-school field trip request form, very basic. That does not come to you. That's page 1. And then the next 2 pages is any trip that is overnight. If it's obviously if you're going international, it's more than 1 night. If it's overnight anywhere else. So any overnight travel goes on this form, and you can see it now has part 1, planning approval, full signature process, part 2, final approval, whole follow-up process and signature process with the checklist. So it's basically an amalgam of all the forms, cleaned up, brought into the 21st century. This is not your purview, this is my purview. This is how I'm going to promulgate your policies, but I wanted you to have them so you can take a look. So if you have any comments, thoughts, suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll get these out and people will understand if this doesn't happen, they don't go on a trip.
Thank you for that.
And I just want to say as an FYI, I understand there weren't extra copies for the audience. Did we resolve that or no?
We did not.
We did not.
We
Okay,
can get
so
copies.
If I was going to say, if anybody in the audience would like a copy, they can have mine since I think this is my third copy.
Wonderful. Really?
Just let us know. All right. 10B, Personnel and Negotiation Subcommittee, Dina?
In the consent agenda that we did tonight, there were the draft minutes from our last meeting. Our next meeting is next Wednesday night, or afternoon, evening, sort of. Anyway, we are continuing to review the job descriptions, and we'll have more information to bring to you in October.
We're completing the
Yes.
job descriptions.
We are.
We're not continuing. We're going to, one more meeting and we're done.
Right. And 10C, Finance Subcommittee, Deb?
Yes, in the consent agenda, you approved our draft minutes from our meeting, but there was one item that needs to be brought to your attention. We had a discussion about the student activity accounts at the Finance Subcommittee meeting, and one thing that was noted by the auditors in the management letter was that some of the student activity accounts had a balance of over $40,000, and while that's within our guidelines, we thought that that perhaps should be changed, and it would require a change in policy to kind of tighten things up a little bit and make things more consistent. And ironically, the day after we had this discussion, on the front page of the Boston Globe, there was an article about this, not about Triton, but about this is an issue in other school districts. So I think it's very timely that we're going to address this. So what we need is I believe we need a motion to ask the policy subcommittee to take a look at this.
I don't know
or
if
do
it's a
we
motion.
just ask
I think-
them to
I
take
think
a
the
look at
committee
this?
can just decide to refer, or the chair can decide to refer.
So I'd like to ask Policy Subcommittee to take up. I can provide you with a copy of the existing policy, but it looks like it's a very simple change. It's literally taking the limits that are there now and dropping them down so that we can funnel more of the larger purchases through the business office and have less risk associated with those student activity accounts.
We accept the challenge.
So we'll bring that updated, Michelle will bring that updated for the September 25th meeting.
And our next meeting is also on September 19th.
If we just make the statement publicly, this isn't because there's a concern about anything that
No,
has
no, there
happened.
is not.
This is
It is
about
not.
making sure the risk goes
We're
away.
being proactive.
Yes, we are being proactive. We did not know that article was showing up in the paper,
No,
but
we
it was
did not.
very timely.
Yes, it was.
It's just been something that, has been a hot topic with school
It
finance
just
over the past
just
few
shows
years.
how much we are ahead of the curve.
All right, and we had no correspondence in the packet, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Linda?
I'll second.
Tina's a second. No discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll see you Saturday.
I don't know, I don't remember. It was bad. Linda, I get out of work. Tomorrow I have to be back at work at 4:30. Friday I get out of work at 3:30.